And good evening, everyone, and welcome to the large program Tigers Tonight. I'm your host, John Maddox, joined, well, I'm sort of here. As you can see, I'm a game time decision. All due respect to the new thing in the American putting out the availability report, I didn't want to disappoint anybody and say I'm questionable and then roll out, but game time decision, but we're here. Joined by another in the infirmed. Actually, we'll start with the one that's not a member of the infirmed. That would be Brian Moss. Brian, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. The Jets have not traded my fandom yet, so yeah, not bad. And I'm not infirmed yet. I'm sure I'll get there at some point. But
Wait,
yeah,
you're
doing
a
pretty good.
Jets fan?
Do what?
You're a Jets fan?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I got
Ooh, ow.
growing. Yeah, well, growing up, I was a Cowboys fan because of my mom. She's from Texas, but growing up in Jersey, I wanted to support someone local. And since my mom's a Cowboys fan, she forbid me to root for the Giants. And she said, "Well, be a Jets fan." So I
That
have two
is,
teams.
look, I mean, I'm a Cubs fan, so everybody knows that. And I thought that was bad. Jeez, man, I'm sorry. You guys are
And I
starting.
and I dislike both owners. So
Gosh, well, at least you have the, the Devils to
it-
fall back on.
yeah, New Jersey Devils.
Well, Larry Marley, how are you, sir? The one member of our injured reserved crew here.
Yeah, I got my ear. I can't hear out of it, but I did get it fixed. And I'm in Nashville, and in this wonderful hotel room. So I'm excellent, and I think the game last week. We're going to talk about this. The game went pretty much exactly what I I said, and I think Brian and I both were pretty close on our score prediction. So, um, so button them up, boys, because end of the season, and every week is a playoff. Every week.
Jerome said it better than we can. 3 games, 3 weeks, all on the line.
Yep.
And, Memphis this week did what they needed to do. I was pretty frustrated with the performance after the first quarter. Coach Silverfield on Sunday was very frustrated with the performance after the first quarter. But he had a great point. He said, "Isn't it a good place to be where you walk away with a 24-point win and you're kind of leaving yourselves clamoring for more and nobody's happy." So I do think that Memphis did what they needed to do, but Brian, the thing remains. Memphis, they flipped the script this week, right? They came out really hot,
Yeah.
started strong, and then kind of just laid down for the rest of the game.
And I feel just from watching the game and then rewatching it yesterday, I kind of feel that Memphis knew they had it in the bag and they kind of slacked off. When you watch that, fourth quarter, I mean, some in the third quarter, but especially that fourth quarter, it just felt like, all right, yeah, we got this. Let's just coach. Let's not get injured. Play it safe. That's just what it seemed like from where I was sitting.
Yeah, and we failed at that first part. Let's not get anybody injured. As Brendan Lewis, who was inexplicably at that point in the game, there was no reason for him to be in. You're up what? They were up
Well,
31.
not only are you winning, but you're not playing with aggression, and that is when you get hurt. I will tell you, I personally never, I got hurt, playing, but the times that I got the most hurt was when I let up, and that's what you see. I mean, at this point, we're running vanilla. We're not doing anything. We're not attacking. We're taking blows. And now I don't think he's hurt very badly. Looked like he banged his knee on the ground. Um, and I'm sure he'll get a bigger knee pad, and they'll probably put a little tape on it, and we'll be ready to roll. But I say that, knock on wood. But guys, I mean, when you slack up, that's when you get hurt every time, and that's what happened. But I predicted that last week on the show. I said you're going to get a big lead, and then they'll rein in, call in the dogs, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, at the end of the first quarter, Memphis had 110 yards. Rice had -5. Brendan Lewis was 7 of 8 passing for 75 yards. Memphis had 35 rushing yards. The Tigers were 2 of 3 on third down, had the ball for 8.5 minutes. And then in the second quarter, Rice kind of leveled the playing field, so to speak. And it was just, Memphis. Of course, Memphis is up 31-7 at the break. But Rice kind of got going. They got up to 71 yards, and then they started getting plays. They ended up rushing 27 yards, which doesn't sound like great shakes, but considering where they started, it was fantastic. And then you get to the third quarter, and now Rice is outgaining you 65-33, and in the fourth quarter it's 81-38. And against Rice, you can get away with that. You can take 2.5 quarters off against Rice. We're going to talk about it here in a little bit, but you can't do that anymore. Like, this was your last shot, Brian, to do that for the rest of the season. This was it. This was the chance.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, the way Memphis started, I was very excited. I mean, man, were they aggressive on defense? For the first half. I mean, what a defensive performance. But yeah, that second half, like I said, I mean, it just seemed like they slacked off. But now, like Jerome said in the chat, 3 games, 3 weeks. There's no room for error. I mean, there was no room for error, this past week either. But really, the competition now is stepped up. When you have Tulane coming in, it's going to be a really good battle. It may not be settled until a little bit in the fourth quarter. I think it'll be close, but yeah, we will see.
I want to talk about this for a second. Jeb was there, of course, because of course Jeb was there. Rice announced, I don't have the picture in front of me, but Rice announced 20,197. I'm going to estimate 500 people. And I think I'm being generous there. I'm going to estimate. But anyway, the absurdity of these announced attendances. Is that right? Attendances?
Sounds about right.
I'm sorry, I'm flipping through. I'm watching the.
Let's go through it. Let's just go with it. Okay, it's announced.
Yeah, well, I'm watching the CFP playoffs rankings are tonight, so I'm flipping through. Memphis is not in the bottom half. They're not 25, 24, 23, 22, or 21. So, and I wouldn't be surprised, folks, and I said this earlier today, if South Florida is ranked ahead of Memphis. Don't be surprised if that's the case. But it doesn't really matter. Well, Jeb's probably right. I mean, it was Halloween. So, I guess 20,000 people dressed as ghosts. We'll go with that. Or dressed as empty seats.
Mm-hmm.
But on to the important thing, the game. One thing, guys, that I liked offensively, 11 different receivers caught footballs. And, I've asked about that before. And, they just say, look, it's whatever the defense gives us. We're going to spread the ball around. Nobody had more than 3 catches. Cortez Braham had 3. Bussey had 3. DeWosier had 2. Sutton had a couple. Bryce Anderson had a couple. Bryce Dorsey had a great catch and run for 49 yards. Jamari Hawkins, Jaden Thompson had a good catch early. Brady Cluse had 1. Matt Adcock. But how about if we're gonna get into it, how about Frank Pesant's performance? What's that? 3 touchdowns, had the hat trick.
Yep.
Well,
are we here to say that he's the new Brandon Thomas?
I was going to say, he's taken that Brandon Thomas role. He likes the contact. You can tell. He gets down to the goal line and he's. But there really are 2 types of runners in football, and you watch the guys. And Tony Dorsett was a guy who ran away from contact. And that's nothing against Tony. He was really fast and he could do that. And then you got a guy like Earl Campbell who ran to contact, right? And that's really is the 2 types of runners that there are out there. There's very little in between. And I will say, this is nothing against them, but DeRosier and um, and Smith are guys that tend to run. I don't say away from contact, but they're not looking to run somebody over.
Right.
Whereas Frank Pizant, he comes out there and he's like, all right, who's my bitch? I mean, where's he at? I mean, you can tell like when he gets the ball, he's looking for somebody because especially at the goal line, he's like, I am about to run somebody over. And that's
Well,
the attitude you got to have down at the goal line. You can't
well,
be looking for
nope.
for. I mean, there's some guys that do both. Like Bo Jackson is a guy that does both. Right, he runs away and through contact. But those are Hall of Famers. But yeah, I love the way he looks for contact and tries to find a little crease and then make it a hole. Right, because that's what you got to do with the goal line.
Well, a little bit of breaking news here. No group of 5 teams
Mm.
in the initial playoff rankings. Um, I really thought South Florida would be in there at 23 or 24. That was my thought, but none. But you know what? Like I said, it really doesn't matter because they've got a bid. So, um, yeah, so no group of 5 teams. So we'll save that drama for next week, I guess.
Well, and if we take care of business, all right, you win the next
It ain't
three.
gonna matter.
It won't
Yeah.
matter, right? Because and you not only do you have to win the next 3 games, but you got to also win the championship game. So but first things first, let's take care of Friday, and we'll worry about the next game the next week, and the next game the next week. And just take care of business and let the chips fall where they may. That's all you can do.
Going back
You know,
to Pizant real quick, it makes me wonder what's going on with Makari Bodiford because he's the one that
yeah.
started that season in that Brandon Thomas role, and I don't think he's played since the Arkansas game. I mean, he had a few carries against Chattanooga, 12 carries against Georgia State, 6 against Troy, and only 1 carry against Arkansas. So I'm wondering, is he hurt or is Pizant just outplayed him? And it kind of seems like Pizant just definitely outplayed him. So this will be one to watch, at the end of the season for the transfer portal because you have a lot of running backs on roster, but you also have some great ones coming in from the high school ranks. So what happened at the running back will be an interesting one to see.
Well, it's the same thing you're going to see at the quarterback position, I think,
Yeah.
too, with AJ Arrington. Um, there's a couple of kids coming in too, I think, and then you're going to have you're probably going to hit the transfer portal again. But the thing is, if you hit the transfer portal again, what does that say to Arrington and AJ? If you
Yeah.
go out and get somebody again, but we'll deal with that when the season's over with. But I was impressed with Brendan's toughness and the fact that this was his game and he was not going to let Memphis lose. He goes 18 of 22 for 225, ran it 12 times for 87 yards, averaged 7.3 yards per carry to lead all rushers.
That first touchdown run was
that was a great run.
yeah. So, but that was a true run pass option, right? And you could see like, he had the tight end. He could have handed it off, and then he didn't. So he takes off. You got the tight end. He fakes the pass and then cuts it up, right? And it was a great run, right? But he was breaking tackles, and that is when Brian talked about at the beginning of the year having a true dual threat quarterback. That's what he was talking about. Is a guy who's not just running because he has to, but in this case, he was running because it was the best option, right? And and of course, it makes it very difficult to defend. We saw that in the second half against USF, where they began to struggle. And I think Jeb's right. He points out that we did have Smith, DeRosier, and Lewis all on the field at the same time. And man, that's tough. That was tough. Like they really had no answers.
Another thing Oh, sorry. Another thing I like about Lewis is how accurate he's been this year. A lot of times when you have a dual threat quarterback, they're not as accurate. But Lewis has been accurate. He's this is his most accurate season, in his college career. And against Rice, what he had 80-something% completion percentage.
Yeah, he did.
So yeah, I'm highly impressed with his ability to find the open receiver.
Well, and it's one of those things, people look at this and they go, oh, well, he's not putting up the big numbers or whatever. Well, he's averaging 69%. And if you sort, he's the leading passer in the conference by completion percentage. He's 10 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. That dude from Temple's been killing it. Evan Simon, he's thrown 21 touchdowns and 1 pick. That's pretty insane. But
Former Rutgers Scarlet Knight.
Oh, is he really? Okay. Well, didn't have to go very far when he transferred.
No, I didn't.
Short drive. But you look at that and you say, well, Memphis isn't putting up the big passing numbers. Guys, we've talked about this and we saw it in this game. Memphis is a running team now. That's who they are. We all collectively, the people that aren't here, we questioned what type of team does Ryan Silverfield want Memphis to be. Friday night is the team he wants Memphis to be. He wants Memphis to run the ball, to not turn it over, to play solid defense, and win games because, as I always say, they don't ask how, they only ask how many.
Well, we could have called our number. If he wanted to run it up, look, we saw this on FAU, right? I mean, Ryan's not that guy. He is, when he realizes the game is, now I will give him this. I think he called off the dogs too earlier in his coaching career. Now he realizes, okay, I can't do that until I know the game's in hand. And then he begins to pull back on the reins. But that's not his style. He's not going to keep kicking you. That's just not who he is. And I don't personally, I don't care. Like, as long as you don't blow a game, you should win. Then that's fine with me. Like, if you can be the nice guy if that's really I would prefer the Mike Norvell who's going to score on his grandmother, in the fourth quarter. But that's that because I guess because I've seen stuff weird crap happen. But and I would highly encourage him, if he's got his foot on someone's neck the next 4 weeks, to break their neck and then go after their family. Okay, that's how I would do the next 4 weeks. Okay, but
because you have to have what they call it in the military, situational awareness.
Yep.
You've got to know what you're dealing with. And again, you could afford to do what you did against Rice. But to your point, Larry, let's say Memphis is fortunate enough and they get up 31-7 at half on Tulane. Or we'll use East Carolina because that's probably a more suitable example. Well, you can't take your foot off the gas. Like, if you happen to get up 24-7, you have to go the mentality, every time. I heard Nick Saban, I was listening to one of his speeches right before the podcast, and he's like, the score shouldn't matter because the score is an external factor. You do what you do, and you keep your foot on their throat. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go out and embarrass everybody. Hugh Freeze. That doesn't mean you have to go out and embarrass folks, but you do have to, within the bounds of reasonable sportsmanship, if you can win 63-7 over a good team, then do that. But that, you don't have to do that to Rice. I was pretty impressed. They don't have the players, but I thought Scott Abel's system was a little bit different. He runs a kind of a triple option thing at Rice. And Brian, here's something I thought about as I'm watching that game. I'm like, Memphis is actually getting a triple option look before the one time a year they typically get the triple option look.
Yeah, it would have been great if Navy was right after Rice, but you have two games in the middle there. But it's still it was very encouraging to see Memphis, handle that triple option. I know it's a little different than Navy, but still, it's a version of it. And I mean, you got to be excited that Rice didn't just run all over the place.
Yeah, right. Rice ends up with 112 rushing yards, and most of those came on one drive in the second quarter. Rice went 3 and out 6 times. Memphis ends up going out 3 and out 3 times, and I want to say those were all three back to back to back, or I know two of them were, and then I think they had one at the end of the game. But yeah, Rice's first 6 drives were 3, 3, 3, 3, and 3, 6, 3, -6, -8, and 3 in terms of yardage. Memphis went 3 and out, yep, back to back to start the third quarter, and then they had one in there. They ended up scoring a touchdown on that one. They only had 3 plays, but I thought it was a pretty even game from Memphis. Nothing, just I think the lack of aggression, Brian, was the thing, and Larry was the thing that kind of stood out to me that I was most – is disappointed the right word? Like, can you be disappointed with a 24-point win? But I do think that the lack of aggression is something that I'm hopeful was intentional for this game.
I think you'll definitely see a difference in attitude this Friday night because I mean there's obviously a step up in competition, and I mean Memphis players know. I mean the staff knows that. I mean from here on out there's no more. I mean you can't afford any mess ups from here on out. You have to play your best. Score early, score often, and put the game away. I mean, it's all business from here on out.
And I agree with that. Gosh, that East Carolina game still scares my pants off. But we'll get more into Tulane here in a minute. But I just thought that Memphis could have played a lot better. But look, they got 2 turnovers. They scored 2 touchdowns on those 2 turnovers. They averaged 5 plays per drive for 29 yards, and Tulane averaged 6 plays for 18 yards. Memphis did not have a single drive of more than 10 plays or more than 5 minutes, and they win the game 38-14. That's just crazy. I just, it's one of those things. This was a game that if you looked at the final box score, the yardage was 3. You'd have thought this was a 14-point game because it wasn't that, out of control. I will say one thing that still Memphis just can't seem to get past these pre-snap penalties. And I don't, thankfully it really only happened once, but it was it was right out coming first drive out of the gate in the second half. And and again, Larry, it's one of those things, you got guys pointing different directions and everybody's standing around and pointing and all this. And it's like, just snap the gosh dang ball. Run the dang ball, Bert.
Well, yes. Short answer. So part of this is the offense that Cramsey likes to run, where he wants to look at the defense and then see if he wants to change the which side, all this. Here's the thing, guys. At some point, he needs to empower his quarterback, his 5th or whatever 6th year starting quarterback, to look at the defense and make a decision about what to do. Right?
I agree. Yep.
At some point, it's got to be on Lewis to walk up. Like I will recall, I forget who we were playing, but the quarterback for Murray, I believe it was, or Moorhead, would come up and he'd look at the defense and he would call out a play. It never worked because they sucked. But the point was, he would come up and he would say, okay, they're in this defense. We're going to switch sides, or we're going to, go out of that play. In the NFL, that's what they do, right? There's no coach sitting up there going, oh, we're going to change. As long as they're doing this, we're going to have pre-snap penalties. The trick is, guys, is that when you really need it, like you're on the goal line at UAB, walk up, snap the damn ball, and go forward. Okay, that's the trick. And I don't know what to tell you, but here comes Eric, because he better have good news, because I plan on tailgating.
Well, friend of the program, but right now probably not friend of Bandmasters. We had an hour rain delay on Saturday. I won't totally blame Eric, but yeah, 9-0-1. We're going to call that 9-0-1. I like that. I just
You
picked
see
up
how that
on
works?
Yeah, I saw how that works.
Didn't that work out great?
Yeah, it did. Eric, welcome in. Appreciate you taking some time this evening to give us that first forecast for Friday night.
Yeah, we'll start with that push. We'll call it a push on Saturday night. The Bandmasters did complete. It was not like after midnight when it was done. So we'll take the hour delay and count that as a partial win. A great night as well. Really, really fun night. And glad to be a part of that. The football game was dry, and we're going to have a little bit of a challenge this week. We'll see how everything works out. But Friday night is when the Tigers are going to be taking on Tulane down there at Simmons Bank Stadium. And I will say, Larry, since you're going to be tailgating with all of your friends out there, you're going to want to maybe the latter part of the tailgate will be better than the earlier part. We do have a front that's coming through during the day, early evening time. We're looking at some scattered showers. It could even be a thunderstorm or two during the afternoon. I do think most of that is clearing out by about 5 o'clock. I believe the Tiger Lane festivities started about 5:30. So hopefully not much lingering at that point. By the time we get to kickoff, I think the rain is gone. We're looking at temperatures around 63 degrees for the kickoff. It's pretty good for a Friday evening in November, and winding up around 60 by the time they finish off. So hopefully we can be 10-0-1 next week after a good game Friday night.
Hey, but not just the forecast for Friday, but it's my understanding we need to figure out if our furnaces are working by early next week.
Yeah, so there was a little bit of frost for people outside the city Monday morning, got down to it's 34 here on the outskirts in Bartlett, 37 at the airport. It looks like we could get our first freeze next Monday morning as temperatures get down around 30 to 32 and get this mid 40s for a high on Monday. So find those winter coats. It's going to be short lived, but it will be very cold. And that's right about the time we usually get our first freeze, though.
Brian, your weather is in our yard. We need you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Hey, Eric, tell everybody where they can keep up with all the weather and the forecast for this week.
Yep, absolutely. Social media is where to find us at Memphis Weather 1 on all of your favorite social media channels. And we'll be looking forward to having a good game on Friday night.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you. Have a great week.
Yep. All right, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks. Eric Procius, MemphisWeather.net, and we switch gears here, changing plays faster than Memphis does on offense. Welcome in our friend Guerry Smith. Guerry, how are you, sir?
Doing really well. Glad to be on the podcast.
Hey, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Well, first things first, I want to kind of get this out of the way, and it's something I think that impacted the game last year, and it's a problem you have when you have good coaches, right? And all I've heard this week is how John Summerall is the perfect candidate for those crazy people at Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why anybody with any sense would want to coach there, but they pay a lot of money. So, but before we get into the football stuff, just walk us through what's kind of the atmosphere. You're closer to that situation. Yeah. Is there a lot more talk of that in New Orleans than we think there is?
There's been talk. I think the distractions last year were definitely an issue. That there's no question about that. He didn't handle it well because he didn't want to talk about it. He thought his players would be mature enough to deal with it. I think he learned the hard way that that's not the case. He has addressed it with them this year. Nothing's going to happen immediately. And I can't explain what happened to Tulane. I understand UTSA is a good home team and all of that, but that was an absolutely abysmal performance by Tulane, particularly on defense. When you let a quarterback go 31 for 33, I mean, it's hard to do that against air. And that's basically what UTSA was doing it against in that game. But I don't think Tulane's problems in that game had to do with the coaching situation. I don't think that's that big a distraction. I think it's maybe even more concerning. I think at this point it might be a personnel issue. We're going to find out Friday night.
Well, I just hope all playbooks were secured, but that's neither. That's a story for another time. Brian, we'll start with you.
Yeah, talk about the quarterback, Retzlaff. He's also just like Brendan Lewis. He leads in passing, leads in rushing. I was trying to without looking. I was trying to use my memory, which is dangerous. But when's the last time Tulane had a quarterback leading and rushing through the
Uh,
year?
I don't know if that's honestly ever happened. I'd have to go back maybe the early 70s. They had Steve Foley, who ended up being a very successful defensive back with the Denver Broncos for many years. He was a quarterback, but Tulane ran too much then for the quarterback to be the leading rusher. So I don't think it's Sean King certainly didn't. He threw for a lot more. They had Terrence,
Yeah.
who was a terrific player in the 80s, but he threw for enough. I don't think it's ever happened. And it was kind of a surprise package. Retzlaff was not billed. In fact, of the two quarterbacks that Tulane brought in this summer, Brendan Sullivan, the transfer from Iowa, he was supposed to be the running quarterback of the two, and Retzlaff was supposed to be the passing quarterback of the two. It's part Retzlaff's been terrific running the ball, and part they haven't been able to settle on a running back this year and have been going back and forth between different running backs. But that first game against Northwestern, when he took off down the middle of the field and just outran the entire defense for like a 70-yard touchdown. That was a revelation to a lot of us, because I don't think any of us had any idea that he had any type of speed like that.
One more for me is when you take a look at Tulane's offense, they're only averaging 25.8 points per game. That seems down. It always seemed like that Tulane had more of a higher power offense. Is it because there hasn't been that running back to supplant themselves as number one?
It's a combo platter, really. East Carolina, up until the East Carolina game, the offense was playing pretty well for the most part. And then that game, they couldn't score touchdowns, and not just in the red zone, in the deep red zone inside the 5. They kept getting penalties, mistakes, and they've been disjointed since then. Now Retzlaff is not the most accurate passer in the world. He completed 57% of his passes at BYU last year, and you see that inconsistency this year. He can make some beautiful throws, but he can really be off target, and he throws the ball too hard sometimes. And again, he didn't join the team until the end of July. So he didn't know his receivers. They didn't know him. That was part of it. But also the running game is just kind of ground to a halt, period, in the last 3 weeks. East Carolina is pretty stout up front. That's a warning game for Memphis, by the way, on the road, where it is on the schedule and everything else. And Tulane didn't really try to run that much against them. Army's pretty stout. Tulane didn't really run effectively against them. More concerning was UTSA, which is not stout up front this year, and Tulane kind of had the same issues. It's sort of like they've gone backwards a little bit, particularly in the running game as the year has gone on.
So let's switch to defense.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start the year, with Northwestern, you hold them to 3 points, and you're thinking, "Oh wow, like we're really stout." Yeah. And look, you had some really good showings. Duke, you held them down. But the truth is, whenever you faced a fast team, you struggled.
Yep, no doubt.
And I think that, so the question, is how does Tulane handle a true dual threat like situation like they're going to have Friday?
That's the question. I'm honestly not sure. Tulane, first of all, Tulane and Memphis were the consensus 1-2 teams. Memphis, Tulane, if you put it in the actual order that the ratings were in the transfer portal of the group of 5 conference teams this year. Tulane, they touted their defensive line additions. I was hearing stuff that this might be one of the best defensive lines in Tulane history. Then they go out against Northwestern, stone them the whole game, give up only 3 points. Hadn't played like that since then. Really not at all. Now, Santana Hopper, their Appalachian State transfer, had one incredible game against Tulsa. But other than that, they haven't been that noticeable, and they really had a poor game against UTSA. But to your point, I'm not sure. But first, it's going into the UTSA game. The biggest concern for Tulane's defense was against a Memphis type quarterback who was a dual threat quarterback. That's not UTSA's quarterback, but Tulane just couldn't stop him in the air at all. And to me, this is where personnel comes into play. Last year, Tulane brought in 3 defensive back transfers. Caleb Ransaw, who was with John Sumrall at Troy, Micah Robinson, who had started at Furman, and Jonathan Edwards, who has started Indiana State. Not big names, and they were all unbelievable. I mean, Caleb Ransall got drafted in the 4th round by the Jaguars. He made an NFL roster, then got hurt and is on injured reserve. Micah Robinson was drafted in the 7th round by Green Bay. Tennessee picked him up a couple of weeks ago. He's in the NFL. And Jonathan Edwards was a free agent, and he made the Indianapolis Colts roster and has played in about 7 games. So Tulane hit unbelievably well on the portal last year on defensive backs. This year they brought in 3 guys too. They brought in LJ Green, who Summerall had recruited to Troy 2 years ago, and then redshirted his first year there, and then started every game for Troy last year. They brought in Casey Eziamumi from Albany, and they brought in Isaiah Woodsworth from Wofford. Kind of similar type programs to what they got last year. They've got a combined 16 tackles from those 3 guys. They don't play. The 2 holdover cornerbacks have been the guys that won the job. Jaheim Johnson was one of them, and they had been playing pretty well for most of the year, but they kind of got exposed against the UTSA. Was really the first team Tulane played with that type of a sophisticated passing attack. And
Ole Miss.
But the difference was Ole Miss didn't have to, because they couldn't handle Chambliss running. I mean,
right. I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, he could, but he didn't have to win that way. UTSA had to win throwing the ball, and it was mind-boggling. 31 for 33, and that doesn't count the touchdown that UTSA had on a wide receiver pass. So they were really 32 for 34, and one of them was a drop pass. So there was really one play where Tulane defensed all game long. But I hadn't really seen that coming until that game. So I'm not quite sure what was going on there.
Go ahead, John.
You know, one thing that kind of jumped off the page for me as I was getting ready for this game or for this podcast is against Northwestern. There were 5 penalties, 11 against South Alabama, 12 against Tulsa, 11 against East Carolina, and dialed it back the last couple of weeks. Because that's one of the things I think that was kind of the hallmark of Summerall in years past, right? Is Tulane's they're not going to hurt themselves. Right. And that was true with Willie Fritz. They may lose, but they're not, you're going to have to beat them. What's kind of been the change with that this year?
Yeah, I mean, it has gotten better in the last 2 games, although they had one crucial UTSA. Tulane scored on their first drive, then they're down, then they fall behind 17-6, and they have 1st and goal at the 2, and their best offensive lineman, Shadre Hurst, had a false start, and then they ended up missing a 23-yard field goal at the end of that. And
we feel that pain.
Yeah. But they've fixed that a little bit. But yeah, I can't really put my finger on it because a lot of it has been veteran. They've got a center, Jack Holyfield, who's been terrific overall. But earlier in the year, he had a spate of holding penalties, some snap infractions, stuff like that. It's been hard to put a finger on that too, as to what the issue is. But their issues are bigger than that right now. I think they've gotten a better handle on the penalty situation, but it's now offense is struggling a little bit, being inconsistent, and the defense was just a sieve against UTSA. Teams don't play the same way each week. That's the big hope for Tulane. Right. I mean, obviously, Memphis had probably the worst loss of any team in college football this year to UAB.
Which was my fault, okay? It's my fault.
That's the whole
I was there. It was my fault.
It's.
Uh-oh.
Well, we lost him.
We'll wait. We'll see if he can come
I hope he gets back, because one of the questions that I was going to have, and I'll just throw this out to you guys since we're talking about Tulane. I have said that Tulane, Duke, and Vanderbilt have benefited the most from the new rules in college football, mostly because a guy can go to those schools, play 1 year, and that's a whole different animal from him having to be at that school for 3 years. And so they can go and sell a kid on coming there. You get a degree from Vanderbilt or Tulane or Duke, and you don't have to be there for all 3 years. Why has that not translated to Northwestern, Stanford? And I have my reasons why I think that hasn't done. that way. But what do you guys think?
I think it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's a complicated thing, and I don't know if we're going to get Gary back or not. But it's a very complex situation because there he is. Okay, cool. Bring him.
Compute. I was honoring UTSA had a blackout for their not to charge my
We
computer,
appreciate it.
It was a
So
blackout on my end. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about, and I just posed this question to them. So I have said, and I've told you this before. I think that Tulane, along with Duke and Vanderbilt, have benefited the absolute most from the NIL and the transfer rules more than anybody else in college football, and I think we've seen that. But why has that not translated also to Northwestern, who you played, Stanford, to some of these other higher end private schools? Why do you think that hasn't benefited them as much?
They're competing against tougher competition for starters would be my answer on that one. But again, if you'd have told me 10 years ago, if NIL had come into 10 years ago, Tulane would have been dead as a football program because their administration they would have they wouldn't have even dealt with it. They would have said, we're not going to deal with this, not that, we're not going to do that. And they've really got the right administration in place now. So they were really aggressive on all this. They had a terrific independent NIL operation. I think it's going to work just as well now that it's in house. But they're committed. But it's easier to be successful in a Group of 5 conference in NIL than it is.
Well, but Vanderbilt's in the toughest conference in football.
Yeah,
and they're being successful.
They have a really good coach and a really good quarterback. I need to see. Let's see what they are when Diego Pavia is gone. That dude, he's a true difference maker. But you're right. I mean, no doubt, because I mean if there was no more sure thing in college football for my entire life, but that Vanderbilt wasn't going to be a contender year in and year out, and now they are. And I give him Diego Pavia a tremendous amount of credit, but obviously he's not the entire reason.
Yeah, I think that they're going to have to do Missouri, and they're going to have to show me after Pavia leaves. And frankly, Clark Lee is going to be another one of the hottest names in football. Well, my last question before we let you go is Larry's favorite part of the game, special teams. Tell us about, Tulane's been pretty good at field goals, and punting's gone pretty well as well.
Yeah, I mean, hadn't missed a field goal all year until the 23-yard hook against UTSA. They're solid. Their return game isn't a whole lot, but these days almost nobody returns. Most teams don't return punts particularly well if the other team knows what they're doing, since the entire guys can run down the field at the snap. But their punter is one of the best punters in the country. He's terrific. They're solid in coverage. So that special teams has been a strong area for the team this year. And it wasn't last year, particularly. They really struggled in the field goal department. And I think a lot of people thought they were going to struggle again this year because they didn't change personnel. And but they've been really effective this year there.
Coaching, baby, coaching. All right. So before we let you go, what happens Friday night?
I always have to pick the score for my paper before the game, so I'm not going to change my tune on this anywhere else. I think I'm going to pick. I was going to pick 34-24 for Memphis, and then I realized that was the score last year. So I'm going to 33-25. How does that sound? Again, Tulane, they can win this game. They've proven. I mean, the Duke game, they really throttled Duke. Duke's a pretty darn good team. The score ended up being close, but it wasn't actually a close game. They've proven they can play at that level, but you got to show me something. And right now, there's no reason on earth to pick Tulane to beat a Memphis team that has been incredibly resilient this year. That South Florida game, I watched the whole game, and I never at any time thought Memphis was going to win that game until they dominated the fourth quarter. And Memphis was a little lucky to beat Arkansas because they had to get that fumble. I mean, it was a nice play, but if they don't get that, Arkansas is kicking a field goal to win. They weren't lucky to beat South Florida. They made plays on both sides of the ball. They're solid everywhere. Dual threat quarterbacks have bothered Tulane both of the last 2 years. So it's going to Tulane's going to have to up their game, and Memphis is going to have to slip a little bit, I think, for Tulane to find a way to win. But you never know.
Tell everybody how they can follow you this week.
Sure. NOLA.com site. One thing Tulane does have that could help him is Sam Howard, who broke his fibula against East Carolina, is coming back to play in this game. He's one of the toughest dudes I've ever covered. How effective will he be? I don't know, but he's absolutely the spiritual leader on the entire team. So that'll help. I'll have a big feature on him on game day at NOLA.com, and my Twitter account at Guerry Smith, Guer Smith. And I am going to be driving up for the game day. So I will be in attendance on Friday night.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Guerry. Appreciate it. Always good to have you on.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And I apologize for not realizing my computer was going to die.
No worries, man. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Guerry Smith from NOLA.com. And all right, boys, time to kick the tires and light the fires. And let's get into Memphis and Tulane on Friday night from the Sim, as I'm going to call it right now. Brian, we'll start this off with you.
I think.
Are we doing a bold prediction? What are we doing?
We're gonna talk about it. Bold prediction, score.
All right.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with this matchup because, like I mentioned earlier, you got Brendan Lewis, who's the leading passer, leading rusher for Memphis, and in Tulane, their quarterback is a leading passer, leading rusher. To me, this is a real fascinating matchup. I don't think one will blow out the other. I really think this is going to be a close game up until the end.
Larry?
I have gone back and forth on this. So if I have one concern, I would have been really happy if Tulane would have beaten UTSA's ass last week, because they've had to sit in that loss because they actually played on Thursday. They've had to sit in that, right? And that's tough. Like, we saw that after Memphis lost to UAB, like, you just have to sit in that. Now, there was a huge difference in those two losses, okay? In one case, like, we lost to a vastly inferior team, and we looked flat and just bad and all that. Whereas, and I would argue that we picked it up at the end, and we might even should have won that game. But regardless, point is, I think that they are going to be really pumped. They're going to be pissed off, and so I have that concern in the back of my mind, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they are just, they're what we saw last week defensively is what they really are. But guys, that's the one thing that scares me. Are they going to be pissed off and do what we did against UAB after the UAB game and just come out and play inspired football?
Yeah, I think that my biggest concern, I've got a couple concerns, and that's certainly one of them, because they just got their doors blown off by UTSA, and that surprised me a little bit. I know what Guerry said, and I know what the talk is, but you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids, and John Summerall's name has been thrown around for, it's a running joke that Lane Kiffin's going to coach 3 teams next fall, and John Summerall is going to coach 2 or 3 as well. He's going to leave Tulane at some point, and this can go one of 2 ways. We saw how this went with Justin when he was going to take the Vitek job, and the wheels fell off, right? And they looked terrible the last 2 or 3 weeks. We saw this last year with Tulane, where they were couldn't have been more uninspired their last couple weeks. And is he this year's Fuente, where the team gets wind of it? And see, this is where it's even harder now, because if I'm a kid, I don't have to play hard, because if I don't like the next coach, I'm just going to go somewhere else and play. I don't have. It's not like I'm auditioning for a job to stay at Tulane anymore. I can just pack my bags and go. Um, so I do worry about that for Tulane because the other way it can go is when everybody and their mammy knew Mike was leaving for Florida State, and the team rallied around that. Um, because that was pretty much done before Thanksgiving, honestly.
Right.
Uh, so the team rallied around that. So which side does this team fall on? Now, last week's effort was very, very uninspired for Tulane, which leads me to believe that if that were part of it, it's probably headed that first direction. But Memphis is also can't take that to heart
Right.
and think this is a game they can just roll the ball out there and win. Um, because Tulane has good players. Now, there was some infighting last week. I meant to ask Gary about this at the end of that game when they pulled Retzlaff. There was some shouting and sidelines. It got a little physical, apparently. So there's something not right because Brian, as I look at Tulane this year, they're mid. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but I'm looking, at the conference, every category, 7, 10, 6, 8, 9, 4. Like they don't seem to be great at anything. They're good at a lot of things, but they don't seem to be great at anything. So let's get into bold predictions. Brian, we will start with you.
Bold prediction: both quarterbacks will have 2 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown.
I can foresee that, Mr. Wave Runner.
My bold prediction is that we have 5 or more passing touchdowns this week.
Wow. All right. My bold prediction is that Memphis will block a punt or a field goal. That's my. We haven't. You know what? I'm going to say a punt because I think didn't they block a field goal against Chattanooga? Haven't they had a blocked field goal this year?
That sounds familiar.
And here's the thing. Back to the Rice thing. The first 3 punts for Rice, Memphis could have blocked all 3 of them, but they were setting up for a return, and I just don't think the guys thought they would get there that fast. But anyway, so 5 passing touchdowns. My goodness. Well, that could be 4 from Lewis, and then a halfback or wide receiver pass. Jeb, he's off the train because he's off the hook because Sutton Smith ran a kickback. Someone not named Cortez Barham will score 2 touchdowns. And I asked him, of course, is that going to be Sutton Smith? And he said he's going to take the field. But yeah, 5 man.
I'm telling you,
that's a bold prediction,
guys. If you look at Lewis as a quarterback, he is settled into this offense.
Yeah,
he has. I mean, we saw it against USF. We saw it last week. He is confident. He knows, and it's not just early in the season. It was Barham, right? He's not there anymore. He knows. He's got guys that can get open, and he trusts them. We can run the ball, but I think that Tulane's going to come up on us to prevent that, and we're just going to go right over. We can just go. I don't know if we will, but we can go right over the top of them.
All right, Brian, we'll start with you. It's Lacey. It's an 8 p.m. Good Lord. It's an 8 p.m. kickoff. So I'm going to go looking at Tulane's averages. 11:36 Central, and the scoreboard will say.
I'm going to say Memphis 34, Tulane 31.
Ooh.
I think it's going to be a close one because Tulane. I mean, they I know they don't score a lot, but they can move the ball. They're averaging 6 yards per play. Memphis is 6.1 yards per play. So you just never know. Is this the game that they're going to be focused and outdo their performances of so far of the year? I just think they're with that loss previously, they're going to be focused and they're going to get a heck of a game at Memphis. So,
And it's a
but
rivalry.
yeah, Memphis wins. Yeah, it's a
rivalry. We learned something this week in the press conference. Tulane offered Coach Silverfield a PWO spot when he was being recruited.
Oh
I
wow,
thought
Oh,
that
wow.
little tidbit.
that's awesome.
Yeah, but he knows, and I think Memphis knows that, although
That's how I ended up at Tech. I was a blue shirt.
they Tulane is a little bit of a Johnny come lately. They are the second, like Memphis was a Johnny come lately, right? And then now this next wave, Tulane is kind of that next school that stepped up because just as I predicted, Boise State was 2, 3, 4 lost seasons away from being irrelevant. And it was going to be, look, who's going to be the next team to step up? And I think Tulane fans have gotten under Memphis fans' skin a little bit. And so it's a little bit of a rivalry now. And I'm here for it. All right, Larry, your score.
I've got it 47-34. Memphis will score. I don't know where Tulane's defense is. Now, that is predicated on the fact that Tulane is going to come up and try to do everything they can to stop the run, and will have to throw over the top of them. If they can't stop us from running, guys, this could be 31-14, right? I mean, it really could be, because if they can't stop us from running, we will absolutely go on one of those 6-7 minute scoring drives. But I just think we're going to throw the ball on them.
I've got 24-17. I think that Tulane's defense is going to play well enough, and this is a rivalry game, and I think Memphis is going to play well enough. And, what I'm glad is not happening is I'm glad that they have Tulane this week going into East Carolina next week, and not Rice this week headed into East Carolina. So you're not going to have that overlook factor. They're going to have to be really focused. And, the other side of it is, Memphis knows they've got to go. They've got to, for the most part, to control their destiny. Memphis has to run the table. And that's, can they afford another loss? Possibly. But that almost certainly means you're on the road for the conference championship game. So if you want to win and you want to host and you want to make the playoff, you got to go 3-0. And that's how you kind of have to. I know coach speak is 1-0 every week, but you kind of have to break the season into quarters. And this is the fourth quarter. So yeah, I 24-17, 28-17, somewhere through there. I don't think either team's, to your point, Brian, I don't think either team blows the other one out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the team that controls the line of scrimmage and doesn't turn the ball over. And frankly, both of those favor Memphis. So, but we'll see.
I agree. Hey, look, this is it. Hey, look, as fans, we for how many years, guys, were we like, man, we just want to be in it at the end. We just want to be in it at the end. Guys, we're in it at the end. This is what you want. So many years we would already have 4 or 5 losses by now, and we would just be playing for which bowl we're going to, right? Guys, we're in it, and we legitimately can do it. And I just want to say to everybody, like, no matter what happens the next 3 weeks, Memphis is going to continue to be in it. And so let's just enjoy this, because it's we all see with Boise, like, you don't get it every year, right? You don't get it every year.
Yep. All right. For the best co-host in all the land, Brian Moss and Larry Marley, this is John Maddox signing off, and we will see everybody next Tuesday night.